I don't know how much in detail you want to go in this respect, but two things that people say when it comes to the quest for Asab. One is in terms of Abiy, it's his vanity project, because he knows that if he were to somehow secure Asab, he would go down in history, and that is driven by that personal ambition, because Abiy is that sort of person. That's one thing people say. The other thing that people say is connected to the historical injustice that you just mentioned. People say, or the Sibirat. They say that it was an act of injustice that Eritrea ended up with both ports, Asab and Massawa, and Ethiopia empty-handed. And now it's a country of 120 million people, and landlocked country of 120 million people in that region is unsustainable, and therefore that it's about time Ethiopians solved that significant problem. That is what you hear people say. Again, I'm trying to be I'm trying to steel man the best case for why people think it's a worthwhile adventure. So I don't know if you want to sort of counter any of that.
Sure. Look, it's not a conspiracy. The reason that, let me put this way. In the last 500 years, Ethiopia had access to international waters only for 40 years. When Eritrea was joined to Ethiopia in a federation. That's when Ethiopia gained access. Of course, Ethiopia always aspired to have access. But it was the Turks, the Ottoman Turks that had it. It was the Italians that had it. But Ethiopia did not have access to. But the fact that Ethiopia, since medieval times, that Ethiopian leaders wanted access to the sea is not to be denied. But it's only in the last 40 years that, in the 40 years between 1950 and 1990, that Ethiopia had Asab and Massawa as its own sovereign port. So Eritrea joined Ethiopia in a federation, and Ethiopia gained access to the sea. Eritrea won the war, obliterated the Ethiopian army in Eritrea, and chose independence in a legal way. Held a referendum, and it became a member of the United Nations, and Eritrea is another country right now. You can wail about it, you can decry it, you can talk about it, you can whine about it. It doesn't matter. Eritrea is a sovereign country. Eritrea is a sovereign country. If Ethiopians did not know this, let me make that clear, that Eritrea is a sovereign country. How are you going to get it? How are you going to take Asab away? By accusing...
In terms of the sovereignty of Ethiopia, actually of Eritrea, an interesting development, and I'm sure this was done with the connivance and permission of Abiy Ahmed. The Amhara National Party, I don't know the official name of the party, issued a statement last week saying that they don't recognize the sovereignty of Eritrea.
I heard it. It's not the Amhara party, to be honest. It's not Abin. It's not Abin is the name in Amharic.
I think it's called the Amhara National Movement Party or something.
Yes, yeah. There is a part of the Amhara, the national movement. It's called the Abin is the Amhara Beherai Nikanaki, or the Amhara movement. There is a section of it that is part of the government, led by the Minister of Science and Technology, who was a member, but is part of the government right now. It is that faction that put out a press release saying that we don't recognize Eritrea as an independent state. Does it really matter? I mean, it's a party, I know, but do you think that even the Ethiopian government has the basis of international law to revoke its recognition? Once given to Eritrea, you can discontinue diplomatic relations. Forget about the Amhara party or the faction of the Amhara party that put out this press release. It's not even worth discussing. Even the Ethiopian government that recognized Eritrea, I've not heard of anything in international law that you could revoke the recognition that you granted to another country. You could cut off diplomatic relations with another country. You could do that. You could recall your ambassador. But you can't take away that recognition. Okay, that's what I don't know if that's possible, but from what I know that once you recognize a country and that country becomes a member of the United Nations, it will remain the member. You can't take it away. So the Maharan National Party could say all kinds of things for internal consumption. It has no effect in an international arena or of any legal foundation for the party to say this. And keep in mind that this is only the faction that is associated with the government, but there is another faction that is also in parliament that laughed it off, a part of that party itself. So what I'm saying is that this cannot be taken away. Eritrea is an independent country. Whether it was done the right way or the wrong way is a matter of interpretation, and it doesn't really matter. What matters is Eritrea is an independent nation and a country, a member of the United Nations. Ethiopia can have access to Assad only through negotiated settlement with the Eritrean government. If you take it by force, that would be an aggression. If that's what Ethiopia wants to do, it's up to them. But my view is that it's not even necessary. It's not even necessary because it's going to cost you about $50 billion to bring Assad up and running, not in any time soon. Now, secondly, the Ethiopian government, the Prime Minister says that we are 120 million people and we are suffocated, and we will not be suffocated to the end of days. What gives you the right, whether you are 120 million people or 120 billion people, what gives you the right is not that you have a big population. It's the economic volume that you generate that needs support. It's economic volume. Now, he could say this, the Ethiopian government, the Ethiopian Prime Minister could say that by 2050, Ethiopia would be one of the superpowers in the world. He could say this to the end of days. And he says that. That doesn't, the fact that you could potentially become one of the superpowers doesn't make it legal. Doesn't give you a legal foundation to take over another territory. So they could say that, but the fact that you are 120 million does not entitle you to a port. It doesn't. The only way that this could work is to work with Djibouti. Look, didn't Djibouti offer Ethiopia a port, Obok, or the other? For they say you can have ours because the Djibouti, the 90% of the goods that go in and out of Djibouti goes to Ethiopia and comes out of Ethiopia. Djibouti is not going to use all of the capacity of the Djibouti port. They don't want to lose that. They don't want that volume to be diverted to Assad. They're the losing party in this case. And they have offered Ethiopia, said, here it is. Why don't they take that? They called the bluff. The Djiboutians, they called the bluff, saying, you want the harbor? Here it is. Come on, take it. If Ethiopia is interested in access, a sovereign port, Djibouti gave you. You don't need anything. Like I said, this is not about 120 million people suffocated. This is simply to make sure that chaos reigns in Ethiopia, and that gives a breathing space for this unpopular government who's remained in power so far only by pitting one political force against the other. And this is another bone of contention, that the Ethiopians simply raise it for nationalistic purposes, but I don't think it's going to bear any fruit in fact.
Well, I suppose what Abiy would say in response to that is that what Ethiopia needs is not just the access to a port, but ownership of a coastline, so that it could have naval base and all that sort of thing. That's what they would say.
And that's what I meant when I say a sovereign port.
Yeah.
Okay, there is a sovereign port. That means Ethiopia needs its own port. And there is access to the sea, just like Djibouti, Berbera, or Lamu.
Yeah, and they are distinct, yeah.
Yeah, and the military base. Why? Okay, if Ethiopia needs a sovereign port, Djibouti gave them the opportunity to have a sovereign port. If Ethiopia wants a sovereign port, they had the possibility of growing their share in Berbera from 19% to 50% they have, so that they could have a controlling authority. That's another option, right? Why does Ethiopia need a navy? Are we going to believe that Ethiopia has an interest, economic and national vital interest in the Pacific Ocean that it's going to protect by sea power, by naval power. Ethiopia's navy is 300, the personnel is 300 people. That you can put it in Lokhaya or in Assab, 300 people. It cannot even protect itself, much less protecting Ethiopia's national interest. Ethiopia doesn't have a national interest along the littoral, much less elsewhere. This is the propaganda of Abiy Ahmed, who believes that in 50 years, Ethiopia is going to be the second superpower. Next to who? How about Turkey? How about India? How about China? How about the US? How about the European countries? What are they going to do? They wither away? Are we going to believe this? It's not true. This is a narrative. This is the propaganda, unbelievable propaganda. It's a big lie. It's a big lie. It's a propaganda. Has no basis in fact.
Well, I think we're going to leave that at that. And as I always say, very good when it comes to cutting through all the nonsense that comes from Ethiopia and showing people what exactly is happening in Ethiopia. And, I understand why people want me to have you on when there are significant developments in Ethiopia. And indeed, I'm going to try to have you on when there are significant developments in the future as well. And I'm sure you'll be generous enough to dedicate some of your time for us, Izquel. But for today, thank you very much.
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.